In Japanese lean manufacturing, there is a very strict, almost sacred rule. The moment a worker spots a defect on the assembly line, they do not pause to think about it. They do not hold the broken part in their hands and hope it miraculously fixes itself while the conveyor belt keeps moving. They reach up, they pull a cord, and they stop the entire factory. The line goes dead. Everything halts until the mistake is removed. Now, look at the average trader. You see a defect in your portfolio. A trade that was supposed to go up is now going down. It crosses your risk limit. It bleeds past your stop loss. And instead of pulling the cord, you sit on your hands, stare at the glowing red screen, and begin negotiating with a market that does not even know you exist. You pray to a chart. Western trading culture tells you that cutting losses is just a matter of brute force. They tell you to be disciplined. They tell you to just take the pain like a champion. But if it were that simple, 90% of traders would not end up wiping out their life savings while sitting alone in their underwear at 3 in the morning. Telling someone to just take the pain is a very confident mistake. The truth is, you cannot outmuscle your own biology. Your brain is heavily wired to view financial loss as physical danger. When you see that red number growing, your nervous system reacts as if a tiger just walked into the room. You freeze. You hope. You try to survive. You are a completely rational actor trapped inside a rigged, culturally overwhelming system designed to empty your pockets. But there is a different way to look at this. It is a 300-year-old Japanese method that completely changes how your brain processes a losing trade. It takes the act of cutting a loss and shifts it from a humiliating punishment into an act of purification. You stop fighting the tiger, you just leave the room. Why does closing a losing trade feel like physical amputation? On the surface, it feels like you are abandoning a good idea. You did the research. You drew the little lines on the chart. You convinced yourself you were right. Cutting the loss means admitting you were wrong, and the human ego would rather burn the entire house down than admit it left the stove on. But there is a deeper layer here. You are hoarding. You are holding onto a toxic asset because you are afraid of the empty space it will leave behind. In Japanese philosophy, there is a concept called Danshari. It is the art of detachment. It breaks down into 3 simple actions: refuse, dispose, and separate. In normal life, it means throwing out the junk in your house that you no longer need. In trading, it means separating your personal self-worth from a random sequence of market ticks. When you sit there watching a trade go bad, you are not harboring a good idea that just needs more time. You are harboring a financial fugitive. You are letting mental clutter live rent-free in your mind. Danshari teaches you that you are not abandoning anything of value. You are simply disposing of trash. You are taking out the garbage because it is starting to smell, and it is ruining the whole room. Japanese minimalism teaches something very strange to the Western mind. It teaches that the empty space in a room is actually more valuable than the objects sitting inside it. Think about that for a second. We are taught to fill every space we have, but an empty room has endless potential. A filled room is just a storage unit. In trading, empty space is cash. Cash is king. Cash is potential energy waiting to be unleashed. Being in cash means you have options. You have clarity. You are safe. Being trapped in a slow-bleeding, downward spiraling trade means you have 0 options. Your money is locked inside a burning vehicle, and you are sitting in the passenger seat trying to adjust the radio. When you learn to value the empty space of cash more than the comfort of holding a position, cutting a loss becomes easy. You are not losing a trade. You are buying back your empty space. You are paying a small fee to get your freedom back. But to do this, you have to kill the most dangerous drug in the financial markets. It is not leverage. It is not margin. It is hopium. Hopium is what happens when expectation collides with a harsh reality. We hold losing trades because we expect the market to eventually agree with us. We watch a green candle turn red, then dark red, and we say to ourselves, if I just hold on for 1 more hour, it will bounce back to where I started. I just want to break even. I promise I will sell if it just goes back to 0. It rarely does. The market is not listening to your bargains. What happens next is a biological decay of your trading skills. The psychological weight of that uncut loss acts like a virus in your system. It paralyzes you. You start missing perfectly valid, highly profitable new setups because all your attention is glued to the one terrible trade that is slowly destroying your account. You become angry. You take revenge trades on entirely different assets just to make up for the red numbers you refuse to close. You double down. You lose that too. The virus spreads. This happens because we forget the concept of mujo. Mujo is the deep understanding of impermanence. It is the simple, brutal truth that absolutely nothing lasts forever. A trading setup that looked perfect 5 minutes ago can become completely invalid right now. The market conditions changed. A news event happened. A giant institution decided to sell. The reason does not matter. The reality is that the pattern is dead, but the expert ego inside your head stands up and shouts, "I am right and the rest of the world is wrong." You must replace that expert ego with Shoshin. Shoshin means beginner's mind. A true beginner has no expectations to defend. A beginner looks at a crashing chart and does not feel personally insulted by the red candles. Shoshin allows you to look at the screen with absolute cold objectivity. You look at the breaking support level and you say, well, the conditions have changed, therefore I must exit. You say this without feeling humiliated. You say this the same way you would say it is raining outside, so I will take an umbrella. It is just a fact. The expert defends a dying thesis until the account is at zero. The beginner simply unplugs the machine and walks away. But what if I told you that taking a loss could actually make you feel good? This sounds like a contradiction. We are biologically wired to feel deep, agonizing pain when we lose resources. Losing money triggers the exact same pain centers in the brain as a physical injury. That is why your chest gets tight. That is why your breathing gets shallow. But by adopting the Japanese method, you can actually rewire your brain to release a hit of dopamine when you cut a loss. You can train yourself to feel pleasure from losing money. How is this possible? Because you are shifting the source of the reward. Right now, you only get dopamine when you make money. When the number goes up, you feel like a genius. When it goes down, you feel like a failure. But you do not control the market. You never will. Therefore, you are letting a random, chaotic system control your happiness. You fix this by moving the goalpost. You shift the dopamine reward away from making money, and you attach it to executing perfect discipline. This brings us to the Seiri rule. In the Japanese system for organizing a workspace, Seiri means sorting. It means looking at everything on your desk and aggressively separating the necessary from the absolutely unnecessary. When a trade goes bad, it is no longer just consuming your financial margin, it is consuming your mental margin. It is taking up processing power in your brain. Cutting the loss is no longer framed as losing a fight, it is framed as cleaning your desk. When you click that close button, you are taking back control from the chaotic market. The dopamine hit comes from the sudden rush of agency. You realize that you are the boss. You just fired a bad employee. You feel relief. You feel empowerment. You just restored absolute order to your workspace. The market tried to drag you down into the mud, and you simply said no thank you, and stepped out of the way. That feeling of taking back control is intoxicating. Once you feel the massive psychological relief of instantly cutting a toxic trade, you will never go back to hoping and praying again. You will start cutting losses with a smile on your face, because every time you do it, you prove to yourself that you are untouchable. But knowing when to cut a loss is completely useless if you hesitate on the execution. Hesitation is the silent killer of accounts. You know where the stop loss should be. You placed it there before you entered the trade. But as the price gets closer and closer to that line, you start moving the line. You drag it down just a little bit. You give it more room to breathe. You negotiate with gravity. You need to adopt the decisiveness of a samurai. In martial arts, hesitation is lethal. You do not pause to think when a sword is swinging at your neck. You move. You execute the block. You do not negotiate with the blade. When your trade hits the invalidation level, the exit must be a single, smooth, automated motion. You see the price? You click the button. No second thoughts. No pausing to see if it bounces. No checking a lower time frame to find a reason to stay in. The moment the line is crossed, the trade is dead. You pull the factory cord. How does this single, violent action build a long, profitable career? It happens through Kaizen. Kaizen is the philosophy of continuous, tiny improvements. It is the understanding that massive success is not built by taking giant, reckless leaps. It is built by making sure your mistakes are so small they barely register. Kaizen teaches us that tiny, strictly controlled losses are exactly what prevent catastrophic ruin. When you cut a trade quickly, you are not bleeding money. You are paying a mandatory business expense. Think of trading like running a physical store. If you own a bakery, you have to buy flour. You have to pay for electricity. Sometimes a batch of bread burns in the oven and you have to throw it in the trash. You do not stand over the trash can crying about the burnt bread. You do not try to sell burnt bread to your customers just to break even. You throw it away, you mark it down as a loss, and you bake a new batch. It is just overhead. Trading is a business. The small losses you take are simply your overhead. They are the insurance premiums you pay to stay in the game long enough to catch the massive, trend-defining winners. If you refuse to pay the small insurance premium today, the market will eventually burn your entire store down tomorrow. You are a rational person. You do not want to lose. But the system you are fighting thrives on your natural desire to avoid pain. The market wants you to hope. The market needs you to freeze. The next time you see a trade turning against you, do not look at it as a failure of your intelligence. Do not look at it as a reflection of your worth. Look at it as a piece of defective machinery rolling down the belt. Reach up, pull the cord, stop the line, clean your desk, enjoy the empty space, and quietly prepare for the next clean setup. The market will always be there tomorrow. Make sure your money is there with you.